Thank you very much, Mary and Mary Rose, for that lovely introduction. I'll just give a very brief introduction to a brief background, rather, of the poet. He was born in 1879 in Mount Talbot, County Down. He spent his childhood in Cashel, and then as a young adult, he joined the civil service in Dublin, and even spent some time at the front during the Great War. After the war, he returned to Cashel to write poetry and lived there until he became very ill in 1940 and sadly passed away in a nursing home in Galway. I hope to show you today how the discoveries I made over almost 3 years about him inspired me to create a book that not only reproduced his poems, but also included some of his writings, some reviews of his work, and other information that added context to the poems and his place in time. This is how it started, with my dad's very, very tattered copy of The Sally Ring, which was published just a year after he died. He was working on this when he passed away. And my mother gave it to me after my dad passed away. And the foreword in this book was written by a man called A. de Blockham, who was famous in his day. He had a column in the Irish press, and he often featured Patrick's poems there. The book was out of print very soon, so in 1977, my dad and a direct descendant of Patrick Kelly republished this book, and Dad was friendly with Tomás O'Neill, who was a professor of history at UCG, and he wrote an introduction, and they presented the reprinting of the poems with both the introduction and A. de Blockham's foreword from years ago. So on to my generation and this century. My brother Gary was determined to honor Dad and the poet and reproduce the book again. So while he didn't actually know anybody now who could write an introduction that was worthy of the poets. So while he was working on that obstacle, I decided to try another track on this side of the Atlantic, meaning in the US. So every now and then someone in Cashel would contact me to ask for a copy of a poem, and I would copy it for them and send it off. And the last time I received a request was in 2021, and that was the first time I actually decided to read the book. And it's not as if I wasn't aware of his poems. It's just my only memories were what the poems my dad read to us as children. He read one called A Reverie, and people in Cashel call it Cashel by the Sea, but it's a very emotional poem about, I wonder if this is still there, I wonder if that is still there. And the last line is, I wonder if my old friends think of me while sitting around their fire in Cashel by the Sea. So it always meant a lot to my father and to us then, because we saw his emotion as he read it. And also how his voice changed when reading different poems. So that was really my only insight up until 2021 of this poem and this poet and his poetry. So I came across, on this time when I read it, what I call magic lines. And this is one of the magic lines I just became totally obsessed with. And I will rake the moonbeams there to find the gold of song. I mean, I just was overwhelmed with what I thought was extraordinarily beautiful words. And then I was distracted then by the title, Moonraker. And my first thought was, well, did Ian Fleming steal the title of his thriller, the James Bond thriller, from Patrick Kelly? But of course, when I Googled, I knew he didn't. Moonraker is a type of tall sail. So I moved on then. But while I was Googling Moonraker, I found a review of the book written in 1941. And this gave to me the first insight into the poet. She wrote that what she thought of his poems, giving them context, and she also published what others had written about him. So now I began to think about the man and his poetry, and also thinking of his poems as poems of place. And a list of hints about him is now growing. There was what was written in the foreword, there was what was written in the introduction, and now what was written in the review. And these were all hints that I was kind of making a list of and going to follow up on. And then, more of Googling, I found the perfect photograph to go with the perfect lines. And this is Cashel Hill. And the photograph was taken by a man called Pat Mullen, who's an author. He lives in Recess, Connemara. And people told me, oh, Eileen, it looks like an overexposed photograph. But for me, this was Cashel. It was holy ground, and I had to have it. So it's holy ground for us, Cashel, because it's where my great-grandparents came to teach in the early 1880s. And the poet was a small child at the time, but all of their other children, including my grandmother, were born in Cashel. And when they retired, their son-in-law and my grandmother, who were teaching in Hollymount at the time, came back to Cashel, and they took over the teaching in the school. And that's where my father and all his brothers and sisters were brought up. Another magic line. And your own curls, they danced with mine, my dear, in that spring weather. So I think I found a good photograph to go with that. So I was thinking of, even though this is not a place, obviously it's two beautiful little kids, I couldn't resist the temptation to show off my little grandnieces, Niamh and Isabel. But the curls and the dancing just really spoke to me. So then, thinking about poems of place and magic lines, I created what I called a prototype of 6 cards that were meaningful to me, and I paired them with photographs promoting the concept of poems of place. I brought these test cards to Cashel. I went home to Cashel, I met with a community group, and I proposed to them that greeting cards be created using the poet's lines and photographs of the places that he wrote about. And also these would be places that they loved. I forgot this, that they would be sold to raise funds for a cause that they thought was important. So they eventually came around and said, 6 months later, okay, Eileen, we think this is a great idea, let's go ahead. So these are 6 of the cards, and you can see that there's DERRYCLARE. Most people know DERRYCLARE. This is the churchyard, and this is Saint Therese, and he wrote a lot about Saint Therese. Obviously, this is a man saving turf, or maybe there's a special term for stacking it. I don't know it right now. This one down here is actually, on the lower left is Cashel Bay and Cashel by the Sea, and it is truly gorgeous. And here we have one showing the bog, what I'm intending to represent, the bogs of Shanahever. He wrote a ballad, The Bogs of Shanahever, and he wrote another ballad, The Rocks of Bawn. And this is the church. There's a very famous poem, it's famous in Cashel, that is. It's called The Builder, and it's about the man who built the church in Cashel. So the cards went very well, I think. Certainly every Kelly in the world bought a batch of cards, and they did actually have to reprint, so we were very happy about that. And what is the word? It instilled in them the concept of poems of place. These were all places that people who come to visit Cashel would know, especially this is a famous statue, at least to people in Cashel. The poet raised funds for this statue because of his experiences in World War I. Many soldiers, no matter what their denomination, had visions or claimed to have visions of Saint Therese walking on the battlefield, comforting them. And also saving turf and the Cashel Bay. So these would be like, this was really the foundation laid for the poems of place. So then the next, what I considered the mother lode of information was discovered. I found that there was a Harry Karnoff portrait out there by of the poet. And but Harry Karnoff, just to let you know, he does kind of do caricatures. So I think Patrick Kelly might have been a little bit better looking than this, and maybe didn't have quite so sharp a nose. But Harry Karnoff did portraits of people, literary figures who were famous at the time. This was done in 1930. And also from Googling, I found the Patrick Kelly papers in its research library at the University of Kansas. And they sent me I mean, the amount of information was just astounding. Letters to and from the poet, unpublished poems, handwritten poems, his finished versions were used to create the cover of the book. He had articles that he'd written in the Dublin magazine, which that's where I found real context for his poem. For instance, his poems on emigration. Yes, and he wrote about how the road from Clifton to Galway, and how it's almost as if the mountains, the 12 bends, are calling away the people, calling away the boys and girls. And then he wrote Recess, about that tear-stained route from Cashel to Recess, of parents waving goodbye to their children as they set off for America. But it was the Dublin magazine that provided me that context, and also context on the Lady of the Roses, Saint Therese, and also context for his poems that not only spoke of the scene, but they also spoke of the sense, the bird song, like Frank was talking about last week. The bird song, the mist, the bog, the moon, the sensations, the rapid inspiration that you get when you look at a scene. He wrote about those and then instills them in his poems of place. By now I had what I considered to be a jigsaw puzzle that needed to be put together. All these facts that I was learning over these few years, and attempting to do what Gary was struggling with in Galway. I attempted to put together something, and it ended up being mostly in his own words, because I had what he wrote about things. And yes, and I used quotes from his letters and quotes from letters to him. So it was really wonderful. But anyway, I'm getting to putting the book together. I didn't have the benefit of Frank Fahey. So I had to design the book myself. And I used a program called Bookymon. And with this program, I was able to try out different sizes of books. This first one here is the size of the original book. It's in inches now. I know you don't do inches anymore at home. 5.5 by 8.5. I tried putting my book together in that, but it didn't work out. Then I tried just a regular sheet of paper size, 8 by 5 by 11. Again, that was really the worst of them all. And I eventually settled on this size, it's a square, 8.5 by 8.5. Because the photographs that were taken during that project in Cashel were all 5 by 7, and that really showed them off to advantage. That was the shape as soon as I had decided on that, I started to input the photographs and input the text, and I sent and published it. Well, that just means I bought it. They're hoping that you're going to buy everything from them, but I just bought one, and I sent it off to Galway, to Gary, just so that he could get a feel for what I was thinking as a way of going forward with publishing the book. Now, this is not the final version. This is just what I wanted to show you, what Bookymon did for me, what I did in Bookymon rather. So here's a photograph, for instance, and it's about a deserted homestead in Cashel. And the poem here is a long poem, The Bonin Men. And now when I sent it away for design in Galway, they did a much better of spacing here than I did. But it gives you an idea of what I was going for. On the left, when you open up the book, on the left side, you have the photograph and the context underneath. And here you have the poem, a long poem all on one page. And that the square format allowed me to do that. And here's another one, that beautiful photograph of Cashel by the sea, and Cashel underneath, a story of Cashel, how much it inspired him, and then a story about how he was friends with Pádraig Ó Connemara, and they'd often gather not in a book-filled academy, but under a tree on the road in Cashel, just to exchange stories and hear the latest ballads. And this is that famous poem that's famous in Cashel anyway, A Reverie. I wonder if the thrushes sing in Drina as of yore, and if at night the curlews call on Carna's lonely shore. I'll skip to the last verse to save time. And sweetest thought, I wonder if my old friends speak of me, when gathered round their cheerful hearts in Cashel by the sea. So that's why they call the poem Cashel by the Sea in Cashel, because it has great meaning for them. And also because there was so much emigration from Cashel and Carna. This had a special meaning for people who left, you know, and who may think about, well, do they remember me? Will I be remembered?
Eileen, can I interrupt you? Would you read the entire poem? There's no worry about time. Go on ahead.
Okay. I wonder if the thrushes sing in Drina as of yore, and if at night the curlews call on Carna's lonely shore. I wonder if the hoary thorn that grew beside the road still bears, as in my schoolboy days, its ruddy autumn load. I wonder if the Lorrick stream still works its weedy way along the moor and past the school to Cashel's sheltered bay. I wonder if on Emla Hill, beneath the moon's soft ray, the fairies still their revels hold till first grey light of day. And sweetest thought, I wonder if my old friends speak of me when gathered round their cheerful hearts in Cashel by the sea. I'm getting emotional myself now. But this is just to show you the format. So I mailed it off to Gary, and he was happy with it, as were my brothers and sisters. It was really a family project. I should have mentioned that the photographs were taken in Cashel by my brother Donal and his great friend, a good photographer, George O'Keefe. And so everyone really had a hand in this, and the amount of suggestions and editing was fabulous. So I was very happy with that. And then came to we sent it off to a designer, and then we sent it then on to a printer in Claremorris, and we were very happy with how they presented it. And the book launch, as you mentioned, Mary Rose, was in the Zetland, and the Zetland is not really used as a country house hotel anymore, but there's a very famous pub attached to it called O'Loughlin's, no relation. Johnny O'Loughlin worked for one of the Guinnesses, and they called the pub after him when the Guinnesses sold the house to, I presume they sold it to Redmond, Colin Redmond, who owns it now. But the Guinnesses really had a country house there, especially for fishing, and they built the pier in Cashel. It didn't appear in the photograph, but they really have put their stamp on Cashel. And by the way, Johnny O'Loughlin's pub also has the cheapest Guinness in Ireland. It's been, even in the Irish Times, it was announced. So the launch anyway was on the 7th, and we invited Máirtín O'Cahan to launch. He was instrumental in creating that emigrant centre in Carna, and he lives in the area, and Kellys who have come to visit Cashel in the past have stayed in. I think he has a B&B or something like that. And I also invited a woman that I'd been coming to know over the years, also from the Immigrant Centre, and they both spoke about Cashel. But Martin O'Cahon was especially interesting because he spoke about the, am I going on too long?
You're okay, Eileen. Go on ahead.
Okay. So it's so hard now. I wasn't aware of this, but it's so hard to get planning permission now. So people, people have families in Cashel and the kids move away and they can't move back because it's so hard to build. They don't want anyone to have another entrance onto the road. I don't understand this, but so the numbers in the schools are going down, which is very sad. They've already amalgamated some schools. There was the school in Recess closed and all those children are going to Cashel now, but it's seemingly even fewer children now in the schools. So it's something to mourn. The beauty is something to celebrate, but it almost causes problems. But the wonderful thing anyway about presenting in Cashel for me was that I met so many people who learned his poems in school, and elderly people who came to the launch. And one woman in particular, she insisted that I take this home. It's a framed version of the poem Bridget, appropriate for today. And she wrote this in her own handwriting back in the day. It must have been over 70 years ago. And then she framed it and she had it hanging in her house. And when she saw that the launch was going to be in Cashel, she drove over. I'd say she was well over 80. She was living in Tombola and she brought this and she insisted I take it, and I didn't want to. I knew it was precious. I mean, gosh, something you've had since your childhood, but she would not let me go away without it. So I have it hanging in my own house. I didn't do a great job of photographing it, but that's all really about how, and I know voyage of discovery is a hackneyed phrase. Everyone laughs at it, but it truly was the discoveries I found so exciting. And then when I shared them through WhatsApp, actually, with those people at home, my brothers and sisters, they were also truly happy with all the discoveries we were making about the man and the places and the context of his poems. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Eileen, I just say, Oli, would you mind reading the poem about Bridget there? Because we can't see the text.
Okay, I'll be glad to. I'll read it out of my book here.
Thank you. Yeah.
She heard the distant church bell ring. "'Tis time I went for mass," she said. "But I must milk my 3 black cows, and I must milk the 3. I'm late," she said. "I don't know how, but sure the fault's not mine. I think I'll milk my little cows. Next Sunday will be fine." "But will I now? 'Tis Bridget's day," and that was Bridget's bell. This day she walks on Ireland's ground. I'll walk myself as well. 'Tis good to milk, but best to make the road while life allows. In Bridget's name I'll make the road, whoever milks the cows. The 3 black cows, they switched their tails, the creatures seemed to know. There was no wait a while that day, for short or long, and so, at sight of one that wore a cloak, the cattle all did low, and this one milked the 3 black cows, and never was such flow. 'Tis good to milk, but best to make the road while life allows, and Maura Bawn, she took the road, and Bridget milked the cows.
Wow.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you very much, everyone. I'm so thrilled that you allowed me to do this.
Thank you, Eileen.
I obviously offered the floor to everybody, but personally, absolutely excellent presentation. Your presentation was excellent, really well paced, very easy to listen to, excellent story. It's obviously a huge labour of love, there's no question about that, and so many people involved, and coordinated excellently by yourself. So
thank you very much.
On behalf of everybody, if I can be so bold as to say congratulations and many, 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 many happy moments with that particular labour of love. Excellent book. So thanks very much indeed. Yeah.
Thank you.
Very well done.
And
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for reading this poem for me, especially. Thank you.
You're
Yes,
welcome, Grace. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you, Grace, for coming in. I'm glad you were able to hear it all there, Grace. Well done to you. So I'll open the floor to whoever would like to speak. Mary Rose maybe might like to come in first. I see your mic is off there, Mary. Yeah.
Sorry, you know, I found myself very moved actually by the whole thing.
Yeah.
And his words are just beautiful. And, you know, I feel so ignorant that I don't know any of them or anything about them. The two poems you read are absolutely beautiful. And the book, I've had the privilege of having a copy of the book, which, by the way, you can get in Kenny's. Not doing a plug for Eileen or anything, but it's a beautiful, beautiful production. A credit to whoever did it. And when I see that it was, you know, designed by yourself and the Book Among program and so on, fabulous. But I'm particularly moved really by the man and his work and his words and his impact on the local community, and the feeling that I get that culture was appreciated and loved in those days.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nobody's saying we don't like old poetry or any of that. It was knitted into the background of the area. Everybody knew him. He was respected and loved for what he did. Everybody learned his poems at school, and the whole thing to me is very moving, and I really loved it. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mary Rose. Thank you. Kathleen, I see you.
Congratulations, Eileen. You're an absolute treasure to have in the group. And I should be ashamed to say, I've never heard of Patrick Kelly or his poetry. And now I'm addicted. Where can I get a copy of the book?
Kenny's.
Where?
Kenny's shop.
We don't have that.
No, it's online, Kathleen. You'll be able to get.
It's online. Oh, yeah.
Kenny's Galway. It's like the most famous bookshop, the first online bookshop in Ireland, I think. But
absolutely brilliant. It's one of the best presentations. Now, one of the best presentations we've ever had on Right On. Sorry, Mary Rose, did I interrupt you?
No, you didn't. No.
Thanks very much, Kathleen. Lovely. Anybody else like to come in now? Olga.
Maybe I could say something.
Yosha, you take Olga off. It's disorientating me. I was going to say, who's that Olga person? Yosha.
Yes, no, I just also wanted to repeat really what Mary Rose and Kathleen said. Those poems, they really moved me very much. They really touched me. And I'll definitely get the book as well. And I found Eileen's exposition of how she did all this, and the excitement of discovering and the lovely experiences she had together with other people in getting the book together. It was very interesting. I thought she spoke very well. It was so interesting to listen to. And thank you very, very much, Eileen. And those poems are really, really beautiful. They're so simple, and yet they come back at the end. They come back to the point, and it seems that at the end there's a real kind of the point is made, which really winds the thing up. They're really, really lovely.
Thank you.
Very inspiring to get to know them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yasha, for that contribution. Elizabeth.
Chris wanted to say something. Chris.
Oh, sorry, Chris. Yeah.
Chris.
Eileen, thank you so much for this excursus into the Irish poetry. I am still learning about all your poetry in this country, and I'm so amazed by that. You know, loads of poets write songs. As I'm a songwriter and a singer myself, I always look for poems which became songs in the end. I think Patrick Kelly would be worth being really woven into songs as well. I think his poems would be well sang. Maybe they are already, I don't know. Thank you so much for your presentation, and I think I've heard the name before even, but thank you so much. And even as just a listener, I was really able to follow through, and I love to listen to you. Thank you so.
Thank you very much. Great.
Thank you very much, Chris. Elizabeth.
Again, I thought that the poems were just exquisite. They were beautiful.
and your own speaking voice, Eileen. Can I commend you? It really, you did such a wonderful job of
Thank you
explaining
very much.
like all of that, and the amount of work that you had and research that you had to do in such far-flung places to gather all the material. Again, we could only commend you. Did you say that you mentioned at one stage, I thought, the Rocks of Bawn?
Yes.
But did he write the Rocks of Bawn?
Well, there are several versions of the Rocks of Bawn, but his version is actually still sung. There's a group out there called Landless. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. They're like four women who sing together with no accompaniment. They kind of complement each other.
Yeah.
It's a special type of singing. And they sing the Rocks of Bawn, and they also sing the Bogs of Shannahever, which is another of his ballads.
Oh, lovely. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's fascinating.
We tried to get them to,
Yeah.
to get them to come to the launch, but they weren't available.
Weren't available. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Thanks.
No, a beautiful president, and like everyone else, we'd all be hungry to get our hands on that book now.
Yeah.
So-
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Anne McManus. Yeah. Yeah.
Eileen, I was fascinated by that whole story. I thought it was amazing, and well done to you to follow it up in such detail.
Thank you.
Yeah, and beautifully presented, as others have said. I think that poor man's heart was broken. Was he all his life away from Cashel? Do you know?
No, he wasn't. He did return to Cashel. I'd say in maybe the mid 1920s, and he used to go back and forth to Dublin.
And you know, I know that area reasonably well, and I know where that church is with the statue of Saint Therese of Lisieux, and I often wondered why she was there.
Well, that's I don't. If
It's
you've got
not
time, I can
usual.
tell you.
What?
If you have time, I can tell you. But I don't want to hold up
No,
anybody.
but you mentioned that he had, when he was in the war, they had seen her. They thought they had seen her on the battlefield.
Mhm.
Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, lots of soldiers from French, English, the Irishmen serving with the English.
Carmel Brennan.
Eileen, I mean, we have time, if you don't mind, telling why St. Therese is in that particular location, because well, I'm sure we're all interested, absolutely, yeah. And indeed, can I just say, our own local church, not the parish church, but what do they call the church that isn't the parish church?
Yeah.
Anyway, in my own parish here is dedicated to St. Therese, and the relic of St. Therese is in our local church, so.
I often thought it would be a very good survey to do to see how many statues of Saint Therese were erected after the First World War.
Yeah.
Because I think that's when
yes.
people became devoted.
Oh, right. Okay, very good.
Yeah.
So is there a particular story why she's in that location that you mentioned in your book?
Yes, because he wrote a poem. He was asked by Ada Blockham after the war, and after Ada Blockham became publisher or editor of a magazine called The Standard, and Ada Blockham asked him to write a poem about Saint Therese because there was a great devotion to her at the time because of the war, and he wrote one called The Lady of the Roses. It's another, what I think, gorgeous poem. And I think from the resources that he earned from that and from other articles, he did like a whip around and got people to donate, and he donated and had that statue erected.
Sure, very good. Yeah, that's very good. Very interesting. Thank you.
Just before we go, Mary,
course,
Eileen, you mentioned Ada Blackham, and I don't know if you know his grandson has a very successful knitting business out in Inishmaan.
Oh, I didn't know that. Really?
Yeah. Yes.
And
they used to go there for the Gaelga, and I don't know now. Ada Blackham, I suppose, or Thurlock would possibly be in his 60s by now. But he went out to Inishmaan and he set up a knitting factory, which has been extremely successful. You can Google it.
Oh,
They mostly export their stuff.
Very
So
good.
be a grandson of Thurlock de Blackham that you mentioned there.
Oh, right, yeah.
That's interesting.
Aren't they also involved in that fancy restaurant out there?
Yes, his wife is French.
Yeah, there's a restaurant, not a guest house called, is it called the
Yeah.
Enriches Suites, which is horrendously expensive and, kind of top of the Condé Nast list.
Well,
exclusive.
his wife is French, and she organised all that.
Yeah.
Well, thanks very much indeed, everybody.
It's all interesting.